The radical jihadist groups on the march and on the rise. That's the finding from an influential global think tank which raises the bar on terrorist networks. This month's RAND report concluding that the threat to the U.S. from global jihadists has escalated in the last 3 years, with the number of groups spiking by more than 50%. Joining us now with insights on this and why it's happening, a closer profile of these al-Qaeda-inspired jihadists, Dr. Zuhdi Jasser, president and founder of the American Islamic Forum for Democracy and the author of the book, A Battle for the Soul of Islam, and American Muslims Patriots Fight to Save His Faith. And Brigette Gabriel, president of Act for America and the author of They Must Be Stopped, Why We Must Defeat Radical Islam and How We Can Do It. Welcome to the both of you. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Uma.
Dr. Jasser, let me begin with you. Is it true that the civil war in Syria has been the largest driver of the growth of the jihadist activity and is now a breeding ground for insurgents, including the group ISIS that's wreaking havoc in Iraq right now?
That's exactly what's happening, Uma. I mean, to see what a few thousand ISIS are doing in Iraq, imagine what they were doing in Syria. The vacuum that happened in Syria, Assad, if you look, as General Keane reported and discussed in the Wall Street Journal last week, he discussed the fact that if you look, interestingly, ISIS was not being bombed in Syria. It's had sanctuaries or Entente areas. And bottom line is moderates in large neighborhoods and genocides have been happening to the moderates in Syria while they allowed the radicalization of their population. And jihadists, then the ISIS movement is not about Syria, it's about the Levant, as General said, and they moved to push forth their caliphate and their ideology. And why did this happen? When America's not involved, Saudi Arabia, Qatar fuels Islamist movements. They won't fuel liberty, moderate movements that would be pro-Israel and pro-Western. So this has happened because of our absence. So the Syria policy is advancing into Iraq, and now the Iranian crescent is taking over Iraq and Syria and into Lebanon even.
Brigette, the ISIS or ISIL fighters, as they're being called, recently released its own annual report called Al-Naba, Arabic for the news. Its 400-page document revealing its chilling breakdown of murderous activities, which boasts 10,000 operations in Iraq alone, 1,000 assassinations in an effort to attract funds from donors, and operates more like a well-organized military group rather than a ragtag band of Islamic militants. What do you say about this group?
Well, they are very organized, and they did not start yesterday. They have been organizing for a few years. The problem is we had a void of leadership and a knowledgeable leadership in the United States, which sent a very clear message to these radicals organizing that America was not looking at the radicals. President Obama was not interested in fighting these radicals. He looked the other way, and they knew this was their opportunity to organize. Now, let's remember, Uma, that these what we call radicals were the same freedom fighters we were supporting in Syria. These are the so-called rebels in Syria we were supporting. Now when they cross over to the Iraqi border, all of a sudden they are terrorists. We in the United States miscalculated and misunderstood our enemy for so long that now the cat is out of the bag, and they are very organized and even armed with our own weapons and have received our own training in Jordanian training camps, and even have American fighters on their sides fighting with them.
It's really a big mess. And Dr. Jasser, can you tell us more about the funding that's coming to this group, and why is it that many political observers seem to be caught off guard by the rise of this particular faction, which also gained quite a bit of ground in Syria?
Well, again, because of American absence, and I disagree with Brigette on the fact that bottom line is there's not only two sides in Syria. Yes, over time, because their funding has come from Saudi Arabia and the hundreds of millions, and from Qatar that funds Brotherhood Islamist type groups, the more moderate groups that exist. The Free Syria Army is not one monolith. It has significant divisions in different regions of Syria where the Islamists have more control, let's say in Aleppo versus the southeast and other areas. So as a result, there have been enclaves where Saudis and Qataris have funded the more militant versus the more moderate Free Syria Army, where we could have helped evolve a more Western looking type of revolution in Syria, but we didn't do that. And as a result, the more vicious, the more extreme have dominated the Free Syria Army because of America's absence. We need a vision in the Middle East. And as the General mentioned earlier, I disagree with him in the fact that Muslims can evolve into a Jeffersonian type democracy over generations. The radicals have a vision over 100 years. Our president, our policy has no vision. It's all black and white, all binary about what's going to happen next week. It's crisis management. And unless we have a vision for liberty, we're going to continue to be caught on surprise.
Brigette, you're shaking your head.
Yes, because I come from Lebanon, and Lebanon is a republic exactly like the United States of America, and the Islamists there and the Muslims were exposed to democracy. Democracy was squandered at their feet. Once they became the majority in the country, they rebelled against our democracy and destroyed the country, and look where Hezbollah is today. We have to address a major issue in the United States, and that is, where is their ideology coming from and what's driving it and why it is not compatible with our democracy.
Let me ask you though about this. Let me ask you about this. So we've seen a level of brutality with ISIS that we have not seen from other groups. It pales in comparison to others. Why have other Sunnis also decided to join them in the fight to tear down al-Maliki's government?
Well, because we didn't. I'm sorry, but because we didn't end the Ba'ath, we didn't end the Ba'athification, and the Ba'ath generals, just as we see in many of these military regimes, are in bed with the radicals and allow them to, they cheer them on because they want to see the end of the Maliki Shiite. So the two fascist types of ideologies come at one another. In the meanwhile, the moderates disappear. And because we haven't supported liberty movements, to say that, well, they've had a liberal democracy, I disagree, Brigitte. There's been no opportunity, no defense of reformist imams. They've had no protection. They disappear because of the vicious climate that they exist. Just like in Russia, we had a long-term policy against the Soviets. Even till today, Russia still has not evolved because we've dropped the ball in advancing liberty, and the same thing has to happen in the long term in the Middle East.
I've got 10 seconds.
But the Middle East is different, Zuhdi. The Middle East, there are very few moderates, and the majority of them are radicals. It's a different ball game. What we call radicals is what for them is the norm. That's how they operate. That's the Middle East.
An inhumane approach, Brigette. I disagree.
All right. I was raised there for 24 years of my life, Zuhdi. That's how they operate. It's the norm.
All right, that'll have to be the last
American
word. It's certainly a very tough situation, and we face lots of challenges with this, with the drama that's continuing to play out there as we speak. My thanks to the both of you. I know you're going to both continue to watch as these developments unfold. Brigette Gabriel, Dr. Zuhdi Jasser, thank you so much. Now, let's hear from you.